Most men are ruled by a lie. They think pleasure is happiness. They confuse stimulation for fulfillment. They confuse escape for alignment. And every time they chase that next high, that next notification, that next indulgence, they fall deeper into the trap. Every time you reach for the phone before facing your thoughts, every time you watch instead of build, every time you choose comfort over confrontation, you're not feeding strength. You're feeding sedation. And what does it cost? Your clarity, your presence, your power. Picture this. A man sits in a room filled with everything he thought he wanted. Expensive gadgets, a beautiful woman beside him, fame at his fingertips. But his eyes are hollow, because somewhere along the way, he traded purpose for pleasure. And now the pleasure doesn't even feel like pleasure. It feels like noise. You've seen him. Maybe you've been him. How many times have you smiled with your mouth while your soul screamed beneath the surface? There is a fire in you, older than your name, older than your lineage. Jung called it libido, but not the shallow hunger we've been sold. Not the flicker of lust or the itch of indulgence. No, this is something far older. It is the force that built civilizations, carved cathedrals, wrote poetry, sculpted gods. The same pulse that beat in the chest of the first man who stared at the stars and wondered why. It's the same fire that drives the warrior into war, not for blood, but for becoming. The same fire that keeps the monk kneeling in silence, the artist sketching through madness, the father building a home with calloused hands. This is not a petty appetite. It's the ancient engine of all creation, all transformation. Every time you build something instead of consuming, every time you speak truth instead of staying silent, every time you sit in the tension instead of seeking a way out, that is the fire flowing in its rightful direction. But when this energy is scattered into 10-second clips, shallow dopamine loops, empty hookups, endless distractions, it weakens, it dulls. Not because the fire is gone, but because you've let it bleed out. It doesn't vanish, it just loses form. And an unshaped fire will burn everything in its path, including you. Every time you sit in silence and feel that rising itch to check your feed, that's it. That's your life force asking to be forged, not flushed. It wants direction. It wants meaning. It wants a container strong enough to hold it, a vision worthy of its power. Imagine this fire as a river. You can let it run wild, eroding your soul day by day. Or you can build channels, structures, purpose, and watch it power empires. This is the same force that compels a man to rise from ruin, to build something out of nothing, to look at chaos and see blueprint. This is the same fire that will destroy you or deliver you. And the only thing that determines its path is your choice. Every moment is a chance to redirect the flame, to shape it, to sharpen it, to wield it. So ask yourself, where is your fire leaking? Where are you wasting the sacred? And when was the last time you felt that primal force, not as a burden, but as a weapon? This is the same energy that drives the artist into madness, the monk into stillness, the warrior into battle. And you decide where it flows. You decide what it becomes. You decide whether it fades or forges. The ego doesn't want truth. It wants applause. It wants the spotlight, the validation, the endless affirmations from people who barely know you. It doesn't seek depth, it seeks reaction. It wants attention, it wants affirmation, it wants status. But the soul is different. The soul wants meaning. The soul wants silence. The soul wants the long game. Every time you edit yourself to be liked, you lose a piece of your truth. Every time you post for praise instead of purpose, you dilute your presence. Every time you shrink to let others feel taller, you abandon the strength you were born with. It's death by 1,000 concessions. Each small betrayal of self adds up, until one day you don't recognize the man in the mirror. Not because you've fallen, but because you've faded. Picture this. A man walks into a room where everyone is trying to be the loudest. They shout, they posture, they speak over one another like children fighting for attention. But there's one man who sits back, silent, present, listening. Not because he has nothing to say, but because what he holds is heavier than noise. And when he finally speaks, it cuts through the chaos like a blade through fog. That's power. That's alignment. That's what the soul sounds like. The ego wants to be heard. The soul waits to be felt. You've seen this man. Maybe you've been the other ones, the one who filled silence with nonsense just to be seen. The one who performed because you were afraid your stillness wouldn't be enough. But here's the truth. The man who is rooted does not need volume. The man who is whole does not need applause. How many times have you let someone less skilled speak louder? How many times have you let fear of rejection rewrite your message? How often have you traded your vision for validation? Your ego yells, it performs, it begs. But your soul whispers, it waits, it knows. And in a world addicted to noise, scrolls, likes, trends, applause, the whisper is your rebellion. The whisper is your compass. The whisper is where real power begins. So ask yourself, what part of your life is being lived for applause? And what would happen if you let silence speak for you? What you crave in excess often hides what you fear in silence. The man who cannot be alone is not just bored, he's haunted. The man who cannot stop consuming is not just distracted, he's escaping. The man who seeks constant stimulation isn't alive, he's running. Running from silence, running from stillness, running from the self. Because silence is where the shadows speak, and many men would rather go deaf with noise than hear the truth in the quiet. Every moment you fill with meaningless entertainment, every craving you satisfy without question, every urge you obey without inquiry, that is not freedom. That is flight. That is fear wearing the mask of indulgence. Your shadow is not your enemy, it's your map. It's the part of you that holds the pain you've denied and the power you've ignored. But it only teaches if you have the courage to listen. Imagine this. You're surrounded by friends. Laughter echoes, drinks flow, music pulses. But inside you feel hollow, disconnected. You smile out of habit, not joy. Because it's not the noise that's unsettling, it's the voice within that never got to speak. You avoid silence because silence is where the wounds live. The moment you put down the phone, the second the show ends, the minute you're alone, that's when the real you rises. And that's who you've been avoiding. Behind every scroll is a scream that wasn't heard. Behind every binge is a bruise that never healed. Behind every hit of shallow pleasure is a heartbreak still echoing. What do you reach for when the silence gets too loud? What pleasure do you cling to when discomfort creeps in? What noise have you normalized just to not hear yourself? That is your shadow in disguise. And the question isn't whether you have a shadow. Every man does. The question is whether you'll keep dancing with distraction or finally sit at the table with your truth. So ask yourself, where are you chasing escape? Where are you medicating your mind? Where are you avoiding the man you're meant to meet? The mask feels safe, but it suffocates. The shadow feels dangerous, but it liberates. And the only way forward is through. Not around, not above, not ignored. He built his empire, but his throne is cold, you know the story. The man who had everything, the cars, the cash, the crowds, the high-rise office, the tailored suits. But every night when the lights dim and the noise fades, he lies awake staring at the ceiling, and the silence is unbearable. Because no matter how loud the applause is, if the voice inside you says this isn't it, you will never feel full. Every man who builds by someone else's blueprint ends up living in someone else's prison. Every man who climbs without purpose eventually looks down and wonders, was it even worth the climb? You can win the game and still lose yourself. You can conquer the world and feel conquered within. This is the fate of the man who chased what looked right instead of what felt right, who listened to the world but never consulted the soul. Picture the entrepreneur who sacrifices his integrity for the next deal, the athlete who earns the gold but loses his peace, the influencer who's adored online and alone in reality. All kings on paper, all hollow in person. How many times have you hit the milestone and still felt the void? How many times have you gotten the girl, the money, the title, and yet the mirror felt heavier, not lighter? Every time you win by betraying yourself, you lose a part of your soul. Every time you say yes to the world and no to your truth, you bury the man you were meant to become. Success without soul is starvation. And the more you feed the image, the more your essence fades. So ask yourself, what have you built? And is it aligned or just admired? The throne may be made of gold, but if your soul is starving, you're still a beggar. So the question remains, are you building for the world's eyes or for your own eternity? Are you playing to win a game you never wanted to be in? And if you are, what are you willing to burn to reclaim your fire? There are things you want that go deeper than want, deeper than lust, deeper than logic, deeper than language. They are callings, instincts, mythic hungers passed down by warriors and poets and fathers you never met, but whose blood still stirs inside you. The desire to fight for something noble, the longing to create something eternal, the ache to belong to something greater than yourself. These aren't just preferences, they are blueprints. They are sacred instructions coded into your soul. You don't chase them, they chase you, in your silence, in your stillness, in the restless ache that no achievement ever silences. When your actions align with these deeper yearnings, pleasure becomes sacred, purposeful, electrifying. It stops being a fleeting rush and becomes a divine confirmation. Think of the father who sacrifices sleep for his child's laughter. He doesn't do it for thanks. He does it because something ancient in him knows, this is what strength looks like. Think of the builder who loses track of time while shaping wood into something beautiful. Every cut, every curve, a conversation with the eternal. He's not building a chair, he's building a legacy. Think of the fighter who trains alone in the dark. No cameras, no crowd, no applause, just repetition, grit, discipline. He's not preparing for a fight, he's preparing to meet himself. This is sacred pleasure, the kind that burns brighter with effort, that deepens with discipline. That doesn't disappear when the screen dims or the crowd leaves. How many times have you ignored this call? How many times have you chased what sparkled instead of what stirred? And what would your life look like if you answered that ancient whisper? You were not built for shallow highs, you were built for sacred hunger. So ask yourself, what sacred ache have I silenced? What deeper calling have I been too distracted to hear? And what small action today could align me with that mythic pulse again? The man who answers this call doesn't just live, he awakens. The parts of you that you ignore will one day make you fall. Not might, not maybe, will. Because what you ignore doesn't disappear. It waits, it watches, it grows in the dark. And when you're weakest, when you're tired, when you're uncertain, it strikes. How many times have you promised to do better and slipped? How many times have you started strong and crashed? How many times have you told yourself I've changed, only to find yourself back in the same spiral? It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you lack will. It's because there's a war inside you, and you've been arming the wrong side. The unintegrated man is a battlefield, a daily war of voices, one pushing forward, one pulling back, one telling you to rise when whispering lies from the past. You hide your rage, it turns to bitterness, poisoning your words and hardening your heart. You suppress your lust, it twists into shame, distorting how you love, how you touch, how you see yourself. You bury your pain, it numbs your joy, dulling your senses until even victory feels gray. The shadow doesn't vanish, it doesn't forgive, it doesn't forget, it waits. And when it strikes, it doesn't just knock you down. It takes your peace first, then your purpose, then your power. Imagine a soldier going into battle without knowing the terrain, blind to the enemy, ignorant of the traps. That's what living without shadow work looks like. You'll fight the wrong battles, you'll sabotage your own victories. You'll keep losing not because you're broken, but because you're blind. But here's the truth. The man who turns and faces it, the man who listens, integrates, accepts, becomes unstoppable. Not because he's perfect, but because he's whole. Because every piece of him is accounted for. Because no part of him is exiled. Because he walks into every room, every challenge, every mirror as one. So ask yourself, what part of me have I been running from? What pain have I locked away? What would it feel like not to fix it, but to finally face it? Integration is not instant, it's not glamorous, it's not applauded, but it's liberation. Wholeness doesn't scream, it doesn't crave attention, it simply stands firm, unshaken, unashamed, and unafraid. There is pleasure that burns you, and there is pleasure that builds you. One leaves you weaker, the other leaves you wiser. One leaves you addicted, the other leaves you awakened. One sedates the pain, the other transforms it. Most men seek the fire that comforts, the glow of the screen, the warmth of indulgence, the illusion of ease. But the warrior seeks the fire that refines, the fire that scorches away weakness, the fire that forges steel where there was softness. Every time you lift the weight instead of the phone, you declare war on passivity. Every time you tell the truth instead of staying safe, you declare allegiance to your soul. Every time you endure the storm without reaching for distraction, you declare that you are not here to be entertained, you are here to be transformed. Discipline is not the enemy of pleasure, it is its gatekeeper, because only the man who suffers consciously can taste pleasure cleanly. Think of the builder who wakes before the sun, sore and aching, laying brick after brick, alone, focused, unseen. Then one day, his hands bloody, his back burning, he stands before a structure he built with his own pain. And in that moment, he smiles. Not because someone clapped, but because he knows, I earned this. Or imagine the man who resists the easy out, who doesn't sleep with the stranger, who doesn't take the shortcut, who doesn't numb the ache. Instead, he holds the line. He bears the weight. He listens to the pain until it speaks truth. That deep satisfaction when you earn your own respect, when you finally feel proud, not of what you showed the world, but of what you showed yourself. When you look in the mirror and know, I didn't escape today, I faced it. That is the pleasure of power. So ask yourself, where are you choosing comfort that weakens you? What pleasure have you mistaken for peace? And what would happen if you stopped running and walked straight into the fire? The man who seeks comfort remains soft. The man who seeks fire becomes forged. Let it burn. Let it build you. Pleasure isn't the prize, it's the path marker. It's not the destination, it's the signal, the whisper, the ancient hum that tells you when you are aligned with your true path. When you feel that quiet yes in your bones, not the loud excitement of distraction, but the calm certainty of direction, that's real pleasure. That's the body remembering the soul's map. It doesn't scream, it doesn't seduce, it doesn't dance for attention, it simply feels right, it simply is. Imagine this. You've just finished a day where you told the truth, kept your word, trained your body, honored your values, and no one saw it, no one clapped. But inside, you feel powerful. That is real pleasure. Now picture the opposite. You spent the day getting compliments, collecting likes, indulging in whatever you wanted. And yet, by nightfall, you feel hollow, because one filled your image, the other filled your soul. Pleasure that is aligned with your path builds you. Pleasure that is misaligned will betray you. So check your compass, not once a year, not on your birthday, every day. Check it when you wake up, check it before you speak, check it when you scroll, check it when you choose silence or noise. Look at your daily habits. What you do repeatedly writes the man you become. Ask yourself, does this make me more or less of who I'm here to be? Does this sharpen my edge or soften my spine? Does this direct my energy like a blade or dilute it like a drug? Every yes is a seed. Every habit is a hammer. Every choice is a chisel against your soul. This is how kings navigate. Not by chasing highs, but by following the hum. Not by grabbing at the loudest reward, but by honoring the deepest resonance. So here's your challenge. What is one habit you've called pleasure that's actually poison? And what's one quiet act, one still, sacred ritual that leaves you stronger even when no one's watching? Pleasure is not the destination, but it's always pointing. Make sure it's pointing home. This world has enough men who chase. It needs men who channel. The sacred masculine isn't loud. It's not reckless. It's rooted. It doesn't apologize for desire. It directs it. You were not made to scroll, to chase, to beg. You were made to create, to lead, to every time you resist the shallow, you honor the sacred. Every time you face the shadow, you reclaim your strength. Every time you choose the path of fire, you step into kingship. So ask yourself, where have I been giving my power away? What pleasure has been stealing my purpose? And am I ready to take it all back? Because no one is coming to save you. But everything you need to rise is already inside. This is the path. Walk it like a warrior, unseen, unshaken, unstoppable.